Have you ever stopped to wonder what's actually going on inside the mind of an AI? Behind the curtain? Well, it turns out, at the very core of all of this incredible technology is an idea that's inspired by the most powerful computer we know of, the human brain. So let's get into it. We're going to build a digital brain right here, right now.
It really all boils down to this one single question. How in the world does a machine, a hunk of metal and silicon, learn to do something that feels like thinking? How does it learn to recognize your face or translate a language on the fly? The answer is something called a neural network.
And the main idea, well, it's basically borrowed directly from biology. It's amazing, really. On the left, you've got your standard biological neuron. It fires, it connects, it helps you learn and form memories. And on the right, that's its digital twin, an artificial neuron. It's basically just a little math function that takes in data, chews on it for a second, and then passes a signal along. And when you connect millions of these little guys together, you get a network that can actually learn.
Okay, so we have these digital neurons, but how do we organize them? Well, pretty much every neural network starts with the same basic blueprint, a simple three-layer structure.
Let's just follow the data for a second. First, it hits the input layer. Think of this as the network's senses. If we show it a picture of a cat, every single pixel of that image is an input. From there, the data flows into the hidden layers. Now this is where the magic happens. This is the part that does the thinking, finding patterns like pointy ears, whiskers, a certain eye shape. And the more hidden layers you have, the more complex the patterns it can find. Finally, all that processing leads to the output layer, which spits out the final answer. Hopefully, cat.
And that brings us to a buzzword you've probably heard a million times: deep learning. It sounds super complex, right? But the secret is, it's actually pretty simple. Deep just means the network has a lot of those hidden layers we just talked about. That's it. More layers means it can learn way more complicated stuff.
All right, so the brain is built. We have the architecture, but a brain that can't learn is, well, it's not very useful, is it? So how do we actually teach it anything? How does it get smarter over time?
The whole learning process kicks off with something called forward propagation. But honestly, you can just think of it as the guess. The network takes in some data, like that cat picture, and the information flows all the way through, and it makes its first guess. Maybe it says, I think that's a dog.
Now, here comes the brilliant part. The network checks its guess against the right answer, and it sees, oops, I was wrong, that was a cat, not a dog. That error signal is then sent backward through the entire network. This is called backpropagation, or as I like to call it, the correction. It tweaks all the connections just a tiny, tiny bit, basically telling itself, hey, next time you see that pattern, it's more likely to be a cat. Remember that.
And then it does it again, and again, and again. This whole guess and correct cycle repeats millions, sometimes even billions of times. And with every single loop, the network gets just a little bit smarter, a little more accurate, until telling a cat from a dog is second nature. So now that we have a digital brain that actually knows how to learn, we can start building different versions of it for different jobs, right? Because you wouldn't use a hammer to turn a screw. Different problems need different tools. And that's exactly what we see. Your basic feed-forward network is great for simple stuff, but for anything involving vision, we use a convolutional neural network, or a CNN. You can think of it as a network that's designed to see patterns, which makes it perfect for things like facial recognition. And for language, that's where recurrent neural networks, or RNNs, come in. They have a kind of memory, so they can remember the beginning of a sentence by the time they get to the end, which is crucial for translation.
Okay, so we've built the brain, we've taught it how to learn, and we've even given it some specialized skills. Let's zoom out. What does this all mean for us in the real world? What's the impact?
This is why this is such a huge deal. This technology is the engine that allows a self-driving car to understand a chaotic street scene. It's what helps doctors find tiny tumors in medical scans way earlier than the human eye can. It lets us find meaningful patterns in enormous datasets that just looked like static before. These networks aren't just a cool science project. They are the literal building blocks of the modern AI that is changing everything around us.
And that right there is their secret sauce: flexibility. As our source puts it so well, the real magic is that these networks aren't rigid. They can be molded and adapted to solve an almost unbelievable range of problems.
So, we've seen how a digital brain gets put together, how it's taught, and what it's capable of. Which really just leaves us with one final and kind of exciting question to chew on.
If these incredible, adaptable networks are just the basic building blocks, what are we going to build with them next?